Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this viewer's choice we're going to be taking a little look at Boris Johnson's election promises. And of course there were many of us who knew that he was lying during the campaign. We could tell because his mouth was moving. You know, when he even had the courage to go near a camera, that is. But it is remarkable just how quickly he has abandoned just how many promises after a month as Prime Minister in control of Parliament. But before that, if you'd like to receive notifications of daily news and political commentary, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, Boris Johnson, not exactly your typical politician. It is normal political wisdom to punish political opponents and reward supporters. In that way, you encourage more people to vote for you because he will then help you out. Boris Johnson doesn't seem to be able to tell friend from foe. Not really having friends of his own, I suppose. So he just screws over everyone. And it's the elderly who the Conservatives increasingly rely upon for power. They always have to an extent. But amongst the young, they're getting fewer and fewer people supporting them. And as the elderly vote in such large numbers compared to the other groups, you know, Conservatives are usually sure of strong support, but they have to throw in a few sweeteners to get them out to the polling stations, particularly on a cold December morning. Now, one such promise was to protect the free TV licence to over 75s. If Boris Johnson won the election, he said the plans to change the system would be abolished. So have they? No. If you're over 75 and you've got your free TV licence, it lasts up until the end of May and then that's it. It's no longer valid. That's not to say that no over 75s would get a free TV licence, but the system has changed in a way that he said he was going to scrap that change, but it has changed, which will mean that many over 75s will not. It's not going to be automatic. Not that he's doing it to screw over the elderly. It's actually to stuff the BBC. Even though they bent over backwards for him during the election, they weren't as servile as he would have liked, and he's starving them of funds until they behave themselves a little better. Another election promise that was broken fairly soon after the election was on the minimum wage. We're going to raise it to £10.50 an hour, he proudly proclaimed. When pressed on the conditions, what about under these circumstances? No, £10.50, that's what it's going to be. So verbally, he was insisting £10.50 an hour is what it was going to happen this Parliament. Now, technically, he still has a few years to make good on the promise. It wasn't a promise to do it immediately. It was during this Parliament. But the spoken words, as well as the ones in small print, have now moved away from the bullishness that existed before the election. The Queen's speech included various little get-out clauses to allow him to not hit his target. And that was only a week after the election. There will be an increase, but well below the amount promised. In fact, below even the amount promised in 2015. And the amount does matter, because apart from the obvious reasons the amount matters, because we're talking about some of the lowest paid in the country, the figure they quoted was deliberately structured to be able to beat Labour's promise, who of course had costed it properly and actually meant it. More recently, Boris Johnson has also abandoned his promise to sort out social care. So under the Conservatives, people have been struggling and increasingly having to sell their homes and valuables in order to pay for care. Boris Johnson said he had a plan to stop this. So he now has a massive majority and can implement all of his plans so he can let us in on his social care plan. It doesn't seem to have one. You know, the funding promise that he's now talking about for this budget coming in March doesn't include money to do what he said he was going to do in terms of solving the social care problem in this country. So again, predominantly the elderly, those people who largely vote Conservative, have fallen foul of another election promise lie. Before the election, Boris Johnson promised EU citizens something as well. He promised that if they were already lawfully resident in the UK, that they would be given indefinite permission to remain. And this was going to be automatically granted. No hoops to jump through at all. That's gone. The government have now put in place an application system, but rather than assuming that the person should be able to stay as long as they can demonstrate they are legally lawfully resident in the UK. No, that's gone. There's now a predisposition towards denying. So automatically granting is not the default position of the new system. He also went back on his promise to support the scheme to reunite unaccompanied refugee children with their families in the UK. That has also been removed in another of his withdrawal bill amendments. The NHS will be a big one, and one promise has already gone. He promised that the NHS was not for sale, and then he's immediately sold another piece of it, in fact various pieces of it. There's a number of services, including cancer services for children, which will be particularly interesting in the headlines, and cardiology units have been sent out to tender for private companies to take public money in return for a service that will, of course, cut corners in order to be able to make a profit. And the usual way these contracts is awarded is by bunging ministers a bribe via a personal or party donation. So you don't even get the best of a bad lot in the auctioning process. You just get the one that's best at bribing MPs. And finally, there's been a more general instruction from Boris Johnson to his ministers to essentially break any and all spending promises that they can, as far as I can tell. The Prime Minister told his cabinet, just before Parliament returned after the Christmas break, he said to review every project in their department with a view to scrapping it. The Chancellor, Sajid Javid, talked about making tough decisions ahead of the March budget in order to prepare the economy for the next decade. Which is rather odd when you consider that we're supposed to be about to enter a new golden age in the next decade, after Brexit. What about all these new jobs and great trade deals we're going to be getting? What about all the money we're going to be saving? In what situation does anyone save themselves a load of money somehow and then massively increase their income, and then the first thing they do is sit down and work out how to be really severe with their finances? No, that doesn't happen. And his election promises were very much about increased spending in all sorts of areas as well. Economists said his plans didn't add up, and those who didn't believe them will soon be seeing the effects of that. And that's just for starters. We can review his spending promises in more detail in March when he or his Chancellor announces his first budget. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, then also please click the Patreon link for details. And if you'd like to engage in the viewers' choices, then please click the channel name and then the community tab, and you'll be able to take part. Thanks very much, and until next time, I'll see you later.